All right, recruiting fans, this is Brian Smith. I am with Matt Ray of Volunteer Country. Going to talk a little Tennessee Volunteers football recruiting, dip a little bit into Atlanta because we both go down there and scout quite a bit. Matt, thank you for coming on the show. I appreciate it. How y'all doing tonight?
Good to be here with you, Brian. Great. It's recruiting season full swing. Signing day is here. How are you?
Yeah, I'm doing good, man. Doing good. Your Vols have made quite the name for themselves in the last, say, 2 to 3 weeks. I mean, several kids they were in on, didn't know where they were going. They've found a way, for lack of a better term. Talk a little bit about the quote-unquote upswing that the Vols are on.
Yeah, strong close right now for Tennessee. Like you said, a couple of guys that, back and forth. Where are they going? Tennessee had some things go the right way for them and have continued, to finish out strong here. Most recently, today they actually had a 2023 tight end, which you had a chance to see last week in Atlanta, Ethan Davis, but a guy that, brings a lot of upside to, that brings a lot of upside to that tight end room. And, they're really excited about there, obviously. But in 22 is where you're really talking about as far as, the upswing. And, they landed Kaleb Webb on Friday afternoon. And, that's a guy that they've targeted for a while, had a chance to get him up in the summer, work him out, offered right at the start of the season, kind of when everyone else did. And they just haven't relented there. But, you beat out Michigan for him really down the stretch. And that's a big pull right now with the way that Michigan's played on the field. And,
Yes.
and Harbaugh is recruiting, this time around. So, I think it just really comes down to Tennessee going back to almost this time last year when Josh Heupel got the job and, came in and, had nobody around him for the longest time. And, literally there was no one in the building, except Josh Heupel, and slowly started getting his guys up there. And, the message that I've heard from recruits is, we've talked with them as they've got closer to committing or got ready to commit. We did their stories was they held true on their end of the deal. They put an exciting brand of football on the field. They competed in games that they weren't supposed to compete in. The offense was everything they said it was going to be. They've been very genuine. And then these guys they've been relentless on the recruiting trail literally since the contact period has opened. They've made, a lot of inroads there and closed very strong there. But, landing Christian Harrison, Kaleb Webb, really re-entering the picture for an Orlando guy, and DeMario Tolan, continuing to lock down some of their commitments that have looked elsewhere. It seemed like 2-3 weeks ago that Georgia had everything going right with Squirrel White out of Clay Chalkville, and
Sure.
Tennessee seems to have weathered the storm there. We'll see what happens on Wednesday, but that's a guy that they really, really want in this class. And, it seems like they might have held out and won that battle there. So, just the approach, I think, in year one, really trying to be transparent from the jump with long-time top targets and not backing away and trusting their evaluations at the end of the day.
The young man that I saw in the Alabama-Mississippi practices this week, the safety, remind me of his name.
Jordan Thomas.
That kid, when I first watched him backpedal, I'm like, who's that kid? And Garcia's like, he's that kid that Tennessee got and flipped him for Mississippi State. I'm like, good job by Mississippi State to get him in the first place. Too bad for them to lose it because he can play ball. By the way, for the kids out there that are Tennessee fans, you're going to like Jordan Thomas. He is a natural free safety with some corner skills, to be honest with you.
Yeah,
Just
that's
really
exactly
long.
what John said. He texted me and said, man, really nice pedal from Thomas. Yeah. And he was banged up throughout the duration of that Alabama-Mississippi week. Had a little flare up in his knee that was kind of just giving him, some inflammation that was giving him trouble. So he's a guy that this Tennessee staff worked really hard and really excited about as well.
If you can get that as your backup guys or whatever, they're kind of out of the blue, that's like in your second half of your class, you got a chance to win a lot of football games. Absolutely. So the Webb kid is the one I'm most interested in, though. He's a kid that Didn't have a lot of offers. If I remember right, he was committed to East Carolina.
Correct. Yeah.
And how does an Atlanta kid get overlooked? I mean, of all cities.
Yeah, and when you think about it, I was talking to his coach on Friday after that commitment ceremony, and if you really start thinking about it, I mean, you had so many guys from that McEachern team over the last 3 years come out and go somewhere else. A receiver, Javon Baker's at Alabama now.
Yeah, I remember watching him. Yeah.
Yeah, and when you look at it from, an overall standpoint, Webb owns every single season school record after this season, so, and physically is, probably further along than Javon was at that time. Still has some things he needs to polish up, can always improve that route running, that strength, but, special teams guy. And, his coach said we just couldn't get people to recruit him. He was a guy that had to go get it. He got out to a few select schools and they liked what they saw. And then he kind of blew up at the Corky Kale and Mercedes-Benz around that time. But I think when they played, he got back in the locker room, had like 4 or 5 offers. But it was still slow. Like Tennessee was even a day or two after those offers. And then there were a few more, and then Michigan was a really late offer. But, it's strange to see an Atlanta kid with those stats get overlooked.
That's what I mean. Like McEachern, for people that don't know, is on the northwest side of Atlanta, and it's one of the richest public schools in the world.
Oh, yeah.
The guy that started Georgia Life Insurance, when he died, he donated all the money to that school.
Yep.
It's insane. It's like being at a college.
Yeah, it's literally like being at a college. It's brick buildings. Every subject has its own building. It is a fantastic campus to be on.
Oh yeah, their football stadium's amazing.
Yeah,
but that is an interesting. I love stories like that because I heard about him when somebody sent me a message like, "Hey, this kid's going to be pretty good." I'm like, "Who's that?" And then all of a sudden he had like 20 offers. And I'm like, "Okay." And his stats kind of back it up because again, he's playing big boy football in Atlanta.
Oh yeah, big boy football. I mean,
yeah. So here's my question to you, as the expert analyst that you are. Name your top 3 current Tennessee Volunteer commitments and why.
Top 3 current Tennessee Volunteer commitments from just an overall perception or a true talent standpoint?
What you think. I don't care what the public thinks. This is the Matt Ray answer.
I'm going to say, I think Addison Nichols, obviously the offensive lineman from GAC. There's so much to love about him, so much still untapped talent, the things that he's done to work his body to get better. And I think he could be a swing man, multiple spots on that offensive line for Tennessee. But he's a true Tennessee kid, grew up, grandparents just lived right down the road from the stadium. He knows all about Knoxville, was a huge chess piece for them in recruiting, and a guy that was not coming to Tennessee under the last staff. This staff.
Shocker.
Yeah, shocker. This staff really had to play catch up, for a really high profile kid with a lot of ties that really wanted to be at Tennessee at the end of the day. I think to be able to go into Atlanta that early in your tenure and pull a guy that USC, North Carolina, Georgia, all those schools that were in on him at the time wanted, that was a big statement for Tennessee in this class. I'll put Addison Nichols at number 1. I'm going to put Josh Josephs right now, current commit, another Peach State kid, at number 2. Just a guy that on the edge, when you look at what Tennessee wants to do with this Leo position, they want to get longer, they want to get faster, they want to get a guy that has, untapped potential, and that's him. I mean, he screams untapped potential. The guy that used to run the 4x1 as a freshman, but now he's 6'5", 220, has so much frame to fill out, really coming into his own, quick first step, but so disruptive in coverage. If you remember back in the spring, Brian, we had a chance to see him at Under Armour Atlanta when he was really, the recruitment was really turning the page and all the offers were starting to roll in for him. And he made our all-22 team there. He's just so disruptive. I mean, he's 6'4.5", probably closer to 6'5", but, has the wingspan of a person that's 6'11". So
Good problem to have.
yeah, good problem to have, So that's another guy that I think is a huge addition. And then I think you can never underestimate the value of the quarterback position in a class. And I think Taven Jackson was a late bloomer in the cycle for a lot of people. Just those quarterback dominoes started to fall. It was Taven Jackson and Drew Aller that were blowing up. I mean, it was if one got an offer, the other one got an offer, and it was that way forever. But chose Tennessee over Ole Miss. Had a belief in Josh Heupel, a guy that's won back-to-back state championships and Indiana's highest classification, and has really connected with this class, been a vocal leader in this class, and is a guy that this staff thinks has a little ways to go, but the untapped potential is there. And it should tell you if Lane Kiffin, Jeff Levy, Josh Heupel,
There you go,
and Mullen at the time at Florida are recruiting you, there's something there. So, he's a guy that's continued to improve his stock, struggled, back in the summer at the Elite 11, probably something that he's not as used to. I don't think most guys were used to it. Those guys didn't really get a camp season last year. Those juniors didn't. So, he has to go out there and work on that, different time period, different time zone, that type of stuff. But, I think that's a position you just can't underestimate. So it's very close for me with Taven Jackson, Cam Miller, and Squirrel White. Those are guys that all have, Kaleb Webb too, that all have, some really early potential at Tennessee.
Squirrel White. What is it you like about him best? Marcarius, but I mean,
yeah,
Clay Chalkville is a great program in Alabama. It's a program that always has players, and it's on the north edge of Birmingham. Again, big school competition, yada, yada, yada. What is it you like about him the most?
I think it's just how dynamic he is, honestly. I think he's a guy that you can move all over the formation, get creative with, get those touches. If you bring him in motion, I think we saw Clay Chalkville do it in the state championship. He's flanked wide. They bring him in motion, and then he comes back out on a little zig route, and you just can't cover it. He's so quick twitch and so crisp that he just has that ability to get open. And I think he probably needs to grow a little bit, but not a lot. And he's a guy that I think Tennessee will manufacture touches for. So that's the thing that I love guys like that. Guys, don't necessarily want to call them gadget guys, because Squirrel White could be a really good SEC receiver in his own right, but he's a guy that they can do so many other different things with.
I imagine that they're going to screen teams to death with him unless they play very close to the line of scrimmage, which is then when you run the double moves and the fake block, and the guy there's only about 10 plays in Heupel's playbook for the most part, and they just change the formation. And that's all he does.
Yeah, they wrinkle you to death.
Yeah, they really do, but they take a lot of vertical shots. Yep. Having a screen guy like White, who also has speed, at some point he's going to be on the receiving end of those. Because I cover UCF, and when he was here, that's what they did. They took 5'9", 5'10" guys and made them 17 to 20 yards per catch guys.
Yeah.
So he's the same deal. It's Jalen Robinson who's at UCF right now. Okay. One last thing here. Two, because they're two different players. I know Jordan Phillips from Ocoee, which is Orlando, and he is one of the most well-built individuals I've ever met in my life. I walked up to him and I was behind him and I slapped him on his back. It was like I was hitting iron. If he does not contribute at Tennessee by his sophomore year, I will be shocked. Plays hard, 6'3", 290, give or take, and it's just built like a Greek god. Tennessee needs help desperately on defense, in my opinion, especially to play in the SEC. They're light years behind Georgia, like just about everybody there is. That's how you get back in the mix, is that guy. I'm looking at his picture on my other screen. That's going to be a huge help for y'all. And then the other thing that is really interesting is I met by accident Mo Clipper when I was sending you those photos the other day. I was at Milton High School a little over a week ago to see Lebbeus, the number 1 junior, and some of the other kids that they have. Lebbeus told me the hardest guy that he's went against is Clipper. And I was like, whoa. He goes, it's that guy right there. And I said, you saying that because you play with him? He goes, no. He goes, number one, you can't bull rush it. And the way Mo is built,
Yeah,
I will solidify.
it's such a sturdy base with him. I mean, you really can't.
He is a monster and great kid, by the way.
Yeah.
I don't know Tennessee's depth chart along the O-line, but just based on Lebius has went against everybody because he doesn't, he's arguably the best defensive end in the junior class, and it's a loaded junior D-line class nationally. For him to say that caught my attention, so I'm kind of curious. What is Tennessee's situation O-line-wise? Do they need him and some of the other guys to come in and contribute freshman, sophomore, or no?
O-line-wise, I don't think that they're going to need a ton of those guys to contribute freshmen. Now, I think sophomore, I think you'll see more of an opportunity for those guys, but I think you'll see let's get you 4 games, work you in, find your fit. But, I think Mo and Addison both have a high enough ceiling that they're going to find their way into the rotation. These are guys that Tennessee recruited and want there for a reason. And, Mo Clipper is one of the things that I think gets overlooked so much with him is his athleticism. He comes from a basketball background, so his feet routinely outwork defensive ends alone at the prep level. Then he's been going against a guy who's hyper athletic and Labius, for the past 2 years. So, he's had that going against him. He's been practicing against probably, arguably, the number one player in that next class. So he has that experience. And, I think he's a guy that can swing. I think he can play tackle or guard if needed. Ideally, I think he's probably going to be a right tackle, but can he kick into guard? Yeah, I think he could, with the athleticism that he has in this Tennessee offense. So I think Mo Clipper for me is probably the forgotten guy in this Tennessee class. It was a massive pull at the time. There were other schools getting involved, and Tennessee went out there. And, again, that's a guy that they trusted their evaluation on.
Well, I appreciate the fact that they do their own evaluation. Too many guys look at a screen and it's, has some moniker on it about some service.
Yep.
Go out to the high school, watch the kid.
Yep.
Do it yourself.
Yep.
Last question, and I'll get you out on this. Do you expect Tennessee beyond the 15th of this month to go into the second signing period with more than like 1 or 2 scholarships? I know the transfer portal puts this question in peril from the get-go, and I understand that. But are there a couple kids they're going to look at, they're going to make later decisions?
Yeah, I think they're still going to have at least a couple of spots open for February guys. We'll see what happens with that. I think ideally they've got to take somewhere between 7 and 10 transfers if it's going to be available. They're going to have the full 32. So since that rule's in effect, of course, they had the mass exodus, so they should have the full 32. I think you could see them take 7 to 10, depending. They're still a little ways out from that, but they've had interactions with different transfers. They had Gerald Mincy up from Florida this weekend, who he's been ready to commit and has announced on Twitter, but they're still evaluating, seeing what tackle options are out there. So they feel comfortable about looking elsewhere and continuing to recruit him. So we'll see what they do there with him. But I think you're going to see them have a spot for a guy like James Pierce, the edge rusher out of Charlotte.
Okay.
A guy that he has the option to sign this week, but may not. He really hasn't taken any official visits. He still has 4 left. He just played for a state championship on Saturday in Raleigh, so he obviously didn't get anywhere this weekend, and still has Ole Miss, Georgia, Tennessee, and several others interested in him.
That's a lot.
And Tennessee really feels highly of him. So I think they would leave a spot open for him. And then the guy that they've got involved with late is a South Florida guy from Cardinal Gibbons, Ahmad Moten, a defensive lineman from down there. Anthony Moten, I believe, is his brother. You remember Anthony from Cardinal Gibbons?
Okay.
Yeah. So he's a guy that they, got to spend some time with during the contact period. They've continued to evaluate. He's blown up late, had offers come in from like Michigan, North Carolina, Oklahoma, Kentucky. Tennessee. So he's a guy that's taking it to February. And I think Tennessee, ideally would like to add a young defensive lineman. We'll see what happens there. But if not, they'll probably go to the portal for a couple of guys. So we'll see what happens with that. But I think they will have at least a couple of spots open for younger guys in that late signing period.
Oh, before I forget, what in the world is going to happen with Tennessee's quarterback situation for next year?
So Hendon Hooker obviously announced he's coming back today. So that's a huge
one.
That's a huge step in the right direction. Joe Milton's still on scholarship. Taven Jackson coming in, so that gives you 3. And then I think from there it really comes down to how they're going to want that room to shake out. They elevated Gaston Moore, the former UCF walk-on quarterback under Heupel at the time. He was the third guy in the rotation after Harrison Bailey transferred. So I'm interested to see what they're going to do with that position. I'm not sure that they fully know what they're going to do with that position. I think they'll definitely at least be active in the transfer portal in terms of talking to some guys, seeing what's out there. And nobody really knows what Joe is going to do.
That's what I was waiting for you to say. Does he stick around now?
Yeah, I mean, he won the job. He won the job week 1 coming into the fall, and a game and a half later, he gets hurt, and Hendon never gave it back. I mean,
he played great.
He never gave it back. He played fantastic, and set the bar really high. This Tennessee staff obviously very excited to have him back, but Joe, I think it's a unique situation for me because I don't know, and I haven't asked, but I would like to know. Did he use his one-time transfer to come to Tennessee, or did he use his graduate transfer? Because he had kind of the option for both. If I remember correctly, he was a Michigan graduate coming out of that spring. So if he used the graduate, he could still have the one time. But, right now, I mean, we'll see, going into the bowl game, going in the Music City Bowl, he's obviously the clear number 2, and, anything could happen. So I think a lot of it comes down to what Joe does. But, I don't expect Tennessee to sign another 2022 guy at this point on Sunday night. But, you never know. We'll see what they, choose to do in the transfer portal. I think, there's going to be options out there for them. But with Hendon coming back, it's obvious that you have a clear number 1. So if you go to the transfer portal, you have to find a guy that's either got multiple years that's willing to wait and develop, or a guy that, is later on in that career and looking, to just have a chance to compete and be a backup and work when needed, because not for nothing, Hendon did have some injuries this year. He's a mobile quarterback that's going to get hit in the SEC, and that comes with bumps and bruises. So, I think really for Tennessee, it's a tough combination of things, but we'll see where it goes.
I like Hendon Hooker. He's one of those guys that just battles.
Yeah, just battles. I mean, that's it.
And he's mobile enough to do what they want, but man, he may not have the prettiest motion. The ball is accurate.
Yeah, it's accurate. I mean, yeah, it may not be the prettiest motion, but it is accurate.
I enjoy watching him play. But, well, Matt, tell everybody where you can find your site at, man.
Yeah, man. You can check us out at si.com/college/Tennessee volunteer country on SI on all social media.
All right, buddy. I appreciate it. Tennessee closing strong. They're doing a pretty darn good job. And to be really honest with you, I didn't see it coming. I don't know if you guys did. I mean, you're following it close. You're a fan and you're on the site, but even Garcia and I were talking about it. It's like, man, what's going on with Tennessee? They got a chance here, kind of finish in that top 10 range, and yep. I would not have projected that as beginning.
Yeah, I think Josh Heupel in year 1 definitely outplayed the biggest narrative about him, that he can't recruit. We'll see how they finish, and we'll see how it holds out. But I think that was the biggest question mark for him. I don't think anybody really doubted that his offense was going to score. The defense is going to give up some points. They're on the field. They played an attacking style, high risk, high reward, trying to force turnovers. And, I think all the on-field stuff held true. And I think right now he's answering the biggest question mark that most people had about him when he was hired. Can he recruit in the SEC? And so far he has been able to.
Oh, I agree with that. All right, man. I appreciate it. Thank you very much, my friend.
All right, Brian. Appreciate you, man.
All righty.